Our first module here in section 6 is to take a look at the expansion of the Europeans outside of Europe. And we'll be taking a look at especially starting with Portugal, and then we'll continue to talk about the Spain of Ferdinand and Isabella as they project their power outwards. But one thing to remember here is that the Europeans have had a long contact in long-distance trade. Long-term, going back to the Roman Empire and the Carthaginian Empire that we covered earlier, trade network and connections between Africa, Asia, and Europe are very widespread. There's lots of commodities moving backwards and forwards, and the Europeans had a taste for many of the commodities that are coming from around the world, everything from ivory to salt to gold to slaves to later on silk and porcelain. But the Silk Road that had been operating for years was starting to get broken up by the 15th century. The predictability of trade to the east had been broken up, and Europeans sort of rediscovered the ideas of Marco Polo and other people. And this is a stylized rendition of Marco Polo, the Italian who is from a merchant family who had contacts directly with the peoples of China, and the legend of the connections between Italian merchants and China was such that the Europeans had always wanted, essentially, if you want to think of it this way, the Europeans would love to buy wholesale what they were paying retail for. The Muslim merchants, the Mongols, people on the Silk Road, lots of handlers of goods along the way had marked up prices. And the European dream had always been to get rid of all those middlemen, those retailers, many of them Muslim. Especially remember, by 1291, all the European states had been kicked out of what you know as the Middle East. The last colony, the last Crusader state is gone, that last trade depot is gone, and all trade is now going through many of the Muslim merchants and Jewish merchants as well. The Christian dream had always been somehow to find a way to outflank and get around those middlemen and buy wholesale. And they had in the book of Marco Polo, his adventures, his stories, this direct kind of idea that Europeans could go direct to the sources of high quality goods in Asia. They could get those things at very low prices, bring them back to Europe, and make massive, massive profits. Marco Polo was that dream, that personification of that dream, and his legend, his idea of how to get to the Far East, how to get to China, was something that drove many of the thinkers of this time. So we had the Silk Road transportation across Asia that had operated. It was being broken up as the Mongol Empire falls apart. We had the Hanseatic League that was doing lots of trade, large volume trade in the northern part of Europe along the Baltic Sea. But in each of those cases, they are still having to deal with lots of middlemen, and this dream of getting straight to sources of materials is still out there. So with the legend of Marco Polo and him and his family, there are truly a significant number of Italian merchants who go all the way from Italy to China and back. And so it can be done. It's not hypothetical. It's not theoretical. You can, as a European merchant, get to the direct source in the Far West, Far East, I should say, China, Japan, Korea, and bring those spices back. Also, India, with the fame and fortune of products and spices, there's lots of money to be made. It's extremely lucrative, and they think in terms of trying to get straight to the sources of materials. So those exotic ideas and spices, cinnamon and black pepper, and later on other things like clove and mace and other tropical spices of various kinds are going to really occupy the European mind. And for those people who are commerce driven, they can see the possibility for significant markup, that the dream would be to go off on a great trade mission, accumulate some very valuable resources around the world, bring them back to Europe, sell them at an extremely high price, and make it all worth your while. Now, for every one of those persons who are able to go out there and do that, they're also the ones who disappear, captured by pirates, enslaved, or killed. So this is not just an easy thing. This is just not taken lightly. But the thing also that was interesting is, remember, increasingly this idea of religious struggle in Europe, not only within Christianity, but also with Jews, with Muslims, and with some continuing pagan peoples, non-Christian peoples. This idea that the enemy could also be of a different religious faith that had popped up in the First Crusade, the pogroms against Jewish people, and again, for example, during the time period of the Black Death. Large communities of Jews have been targeted as scapegoats. Many of them are going to move further east into Poland and areas like that at the invitation of princes there to in part get away from some of the active discrimination and assault. So Europe has this religious idea, there's a religious warfare, there's a sense of crusade, and to be actively trading with Muslims for some people seemingly is part of that religious idea. If we could just get around them and also go out there. And the other thing that's happening is European Christians know that there are other varieties of Christians out there. There are Coptic Christians in Egypt. There are Armenian and Georgian Christians in parts of the Caucasus Mountains. So the idea that there's a Christian kingdom out there that could make common cause against Islam is not a crazy idea. There are others out there. And there's the dream of somehow going out and transferring the fight against Islam from being just one European against Muslims to the idea of maybe European Christians could make common cause with Asian Christians and undermine Islam and open up trade networks. All those ideas are out there, okay? Now, Henry the Navigator. He's a famous Portuguese prince from the 15th century, all right? He has an older brother who's going to become king, and he's sort of the spare, right? The heir, and then there's the spare in many royal families. He has great prestige. He's well educated. He also comes out of the tradition in both Portugal and Spain of what's called the Iberian nations, that royal families always are able to get 20% of the taxes on imported goods. Okay, it's referred to as la quinta, the 20%, the quintile. 20% of the value of something goes into the pocket of the royal family as an import tax. So, for the Portuguese first, the idea of having an expanded overseas empire has the idea of, say, spreading Christianity. It has the idea of glory for those who are able to do it, a sense of adventure. It could also be the idea of bringing missionaries and converting people to Christianity. All those are valid ideas, but also within this whole concept of exploration is that the royal family is in for 20%. So Henry is going to be working very hard with people to draw better maps, better understandings of scientific sea equipment, better ways of reading the stars, different ways of predicting tides and things like that. Everything that a seaman, a real mariner, would like in specific directions on where to get into certain ports at high tide, low tide. All the kinds of informations that are out there, all the different kinds of information out there for seafarers and mariners is being collected by many people. And for those of us who know somebody, for example, who's really into golf, they meet other people and they want to talk about golf. Well, for Prince Henry and the people around him, they're mariners, they're explorers. They want to catalog all the information they can find. They want to go out and explore as best they can and bring that information back. In the case of Henry, he is going to be responsible for really helping push the Portuguese royal family and merchants to push the further and further down the coastline of Africa. And here's what we want to do in terms of taking a look at a map, all right? This is a basic map on a worldwide scale of what the Portuguese Empire is looking like, okay? And the areas are going to be areas of Portuguese trade as well as settlement. And it's on a worldwide level, okay? What I want to notice here for a second, and let me use the red pen, is that Henry and other people in Portugal are going to start here, and their main emphasis is to understand better the whole coastline of Africa. So, with the goal of getting to the Far East, right? They're not sure how to get there yet, but increasingly every year the Portuguese go down the coastline of Africa, they go a little bit further. They map all the harbors and bays. They map the river mouths. They keep track of different trade stations. So the Portuguese are committed to exploration, but their exploration is on the coastline of Africa. They stay very close to the coastline. They don't have to sail without seeing land. They're going places they've never been before or seen before, but they are very close to being on the coastline so that you don't have to, as a sailor, sail into the middle of the ocean and see nothing. All right? But Henry is going to be involved in this because there is, of course, the royal 20%, but there's also a long-distance trade. Trade from Africa into Europe is not new. It's been going on for several centuries. Henry is simply continuing the process of trading with Africa, but now going back to that Christian dream of cutting out all the middlemen, especially the Muslim merchants. Now they're trying to go directly to the sources of slaves and gold and salt and other things that they can extract from Africa. Now, Henry's going to do this for many reasons, like I said. Adventure, possible spreading of Christianity, stabilizing the monarchy, bringing in more revenue. Henry, for example, is going to be involved in the slave trade. He's going to start to be importing slaves from Africa into Lisbon and other locations in Portugal, which is going to become increasingly lucrative. He's also, by sponsoring a lot of these trips, these explorations, they're starting to find many different islands that they had not discovered. Okay, and now they are showing these islands here in the ocean. There's several of them. Okay, there's several of them, and what you want to think about is that the European exploration is driven by many factors, but essentially control of territory and the wealth you can extract from it will be a key interesting idea. So Henry's pushing this idea. He's working with others to do so. He's trying to find a way to assist the Portuguese Empire, and he is in the process of doing this, getting into a world of deeper commerce, deeper exploration, but also is on the edge of slavery. And what's also going to be noticeable here is that as the Portuguese expand and as they start to conquer more territory, they are going to have to make some decisions about what they want to conquer outright, what they wish to occupy, or in some places what they'll essentially do is just do a small trade station. Keep a small fortress, trade with the local peoples, but not try to occupy their essential space. Another thing that's going to happen is that they will eventually, as you can see on this map, they are going to go and have an exploration that will eventually land them in what you know as modern-day Brazil. So if you look on the screen here, you can see that the Portuguese are going to start to expand their empire, not only in Africa and Asia, but eventually they're also going to do it by getting involved in Brazil. So now we have a relatively small state like Portugal that has a relatively small population, but is right on the edge of the Atlantic. They're willing to go to sea, they're willing to go and find these opportunities, and they're creating essentially a worldwide trade network based on colonies and extraction of resources. As you look through your reading, take a look at some of the ways in which they explain Portuguese exploration and how they're going to take a look and find ways for you to understand that not only are they going to be, of course, doing all these things, discovering islands and African coastline, but they're also going to be working to spread the ideas of trade, exploration, slaves, and the ideas for Christianity. So, as you take a look at the expansion of the Portuguese Empire, notice that they have sort of staked their claim for many places in Africa, and should there be another European power that's going to want to expand overseas, it looks as if Africa has already been covered. Somebody's going to need to take a risk and try something else, and that might be somebody named Christopher Columbus. So, take a look at this early idea of the Portuguese expansion across Africa, Asia, and later on South America, and then also take a look and see if there are some sample questions that can help pull together your knowledge regarding this time frame.